Hey everyone, I'm Lucas, and today we're going to be looking at CSS Flexbox. CSS Flexbox is one of the best ways you can position different elements in the viewport, so let's get started. Here we have a parent div with a class of container with a teal background and a width set to 100%, as well as a minimum height set to 100 pixels. And inside this, we have 5 child divs, each with a class of square, with a number ranging from 1 to 5. As you can see, they have an orange background, as well as a border, and their default display property right now, since they're divs, is just block, but we'll quickly see how that changes once we start using display flex. So what we're going to do to start for the flex box is we're going to set the display property of this parent container to display flex. And now if we refresh this, we'll see now they go in a row. So the next property here is flex direction, and by default this is set to row. So as you can see, if we set it to row, nothing's going to change. However, if we want to set it to column, we'll see now they go in a column instead of a row. Conversely, there's also row reverse, which we'll go back to row first to see how this changes. But if we have row this way, starting from the left to right, but if we set row reverse, we'll see now it starts on the opposite end and goes in the other direction. Similarly with column, if we set this to be column reverse, we'll see that the numbers will flip from the bottom, starting from 1 and going to 5 to the top. But for now, we're just going to leave it our property to be display, or the flex direction of a row, which is the default value. So if we refresh this, we'll see it's back to being a row. The next property, which is really important, is justify content. So justify content aligns the items in the direction it's being flexed. So since in this one we have a flex direction of 1, or flex direction of row, excuse me, it's going to flex along this left to right axis. So first of all, if we want to do flex direction center, we'll see that now it'll center it along this direction. Another property which is really helpful here is we could use justify content space between, and now we'll see it'll space them out and stretching from the left all the way to the right, each with equal space. So if we resize, we'll see that those adjust accordingly. Additionally, we can do space around, which gives them on each side an equal space. So we can see a space from on the left side of the 1 to halfway between the 1 and the 2 is equal, going all the way across. And lastly, we can give them space evenly, which will put equal space in between each element, as you can see there. So let's go back for now and give this back to justify content of center. And the next one we want to look at is align items. So align items, if we want to center this div within this parent div, or these child elements within the parent div, if we did align items centered along with the justify content of centered, we'll see now this is centered within our view, or our parent container with the flex set to it. Similarly, we can do align items, we can do flex start, which will align them to the top since it's wherever the flex started from. And conversely, we can do flex end, which will flex them on the far end. And let's look at one more thing here while we have this, is we're going to set, let's say we wanted our flex direction to be a column instead. So now you can see, since we have align or justify content is going in the direction of the flex, this is technically centered, but it's a little bit hard to see right now. So instead, if we give this a height, let's say of 600 pixels, we'll see now it's still centered in that direction it's going. Align items is going to put a flex end though, because it's the opposite direction. So this is going to be from left to right still, and it's going to be at flex end. If we put a flex start, we'll see that it'll be on the left side. And lastly, if we put this align items to center, we'll see that's going to be in the center. But for now, let's just get rid of this and let it just be just back to being a flex direction of row, which, like I said, is the default value, but it's helpful to see. And so we'll see that there. The next property we're going to look at is flex wrap. So once again, we still have our 5 elements in a row. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to increase the width of these a little bit. So let's move these up to 100 pixels. And as we can see now, they're still in a line. But if we start to shrink, these will get smushed to fit that parent container. However, if we set this here of a flex wrap value to wrap, we'll see as these start to shrink, they will start to wrap into the next line, which is really, really helpful. Let's say you had a page, let's say like an e-commerce site with multiple products on a page, and you didn't want the cards or each product card to shrink less than maybe 100 pixels, maybe a couple bit more. Using Flex Wrap, you can have them just to wrap like that. And also it's really helpful too if you use Justify Content Center as well. So as these wrap, we'll see that they'll stay in the center. Or even we could do space evenly, same type of thing. They'll stay centered, which is really useful. And next, we're going to remove this now. And the next property we're going to look at is the flex property itself. The flex property is actually a combination of 3 properties, which we'll split out and look at one at a time. So to start, we're going to switch this flex direction to a column. And once again, those items will start going down. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to break this out, and we'll give this first one an ID of first. And we'll give it some of its own styling. And first we're going to give this a flex grow of 1. So now we'll see. So flex grow, by default, the value is 0, which is applied to 2 through 5 here. But flex grow tells us how it's supposed to handle any extra space. So before, if we comment this out, we can see there's a lot of extra space in this parent div in the vertical direction, since we're in a flex direction of column. But now, since we have a flex grow of 1, this will grow to occupy the maximum amount of space available. And let's say we wanted to give this third one an ID of third, and we also wanted to give it a flex grow property. Let's say we want to give it 2. We'll see that it'll grow to be twice the size of the flex grow of 1. So now this is twice the size of this one. The other ones still have that value of 0 by default. The next property we're going to look at is flex basis, which is the default minimum size we want. So let's say we gave this 300 pixels. Now this is going to be 300 pixels high, whereas let's say we got rid of this. Actually, we'll keep this for a minute. As we can see, we have the flex grow of 2. So this is twice the size of a flex grow of 1. However, since this one has flex basis of 300, the minimum size it'll be is 300 pixels. If we move this down to 200, it'll be 200, and this will start to increase and occupy the rest of the space. But if we give this back to say a flex of 1, we'll see this still occupies 200 pixels. And the last property of flex is flex shrink. And this one's best demonstrated if we do a flex direction of row. So as we can see, we have that flex grow of 1, which occupies more space, and the other ones are all a flex grow of 0. But let's say we want to give all the squares a flex grow of 1. So now we'll just comment this out for a minute, and we'll see, we'll get rid of that flex basis property, and we'll see now they're all the same size. However, if we give this a flex shrink value of, let's say, 2, we'll see as this shrinks, it'll be half the size of the other ones. And by default, the flex shrink property default value is 1. So that's why these are twice the size, and this is half when this is set to be 2. If we made this 3, we'll see it gets even smaller as we flex shrink. But these can all be written. Let's say we wanted a flex basis of, I don't know, maybe since the width is 100 pixels, we say 120 pixels. We'll see that increases to 120. But this can be written like this. So the first value in the flex is flex grow, so we'll have 1, then space to your next one, which is flex shrink, which will have a 3, and lastly flex basis. In this case, we have 120 pixels. So now if we clear out the rest of these styles, we'll see it looks the exact same as how we had it before, but still behaving how we want it to. But for the most part, you generally don't need to use flex basis or flex shrink. You can just use flex and just set the first property, which will be that flex grow property. And if we switch this back to a column and we remove the flex grow for the other ones, we'll see that that one will grow to be the size fit the rest of the space in the parent div. And that's a quick explanation of CSS Flexbox. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, as well as comment down below what you want to see next. Bye.